It is a great series of tunnels and caves within the Misty Mountains, and at its heart was a large cavern ruled by a massive goblin. But who was this fearsome chieftain, and how did his civilization and role fit with the other orcs of Middle-earth? Today on Nerd of the Rings, we cover the Great Goblin and Goblin-town. Tolkien introduces us to this striking character and his realm in the pages of The Hobbit, when Bilbo is on his great journey with the company of Thorin Oakenshield. This comes after the dwarves have left Rivendell and are crossing the Misty Mountains via the High Pass. This was one of two passes in the vicinity. However, the second and easier path was known to run near the main gate of an orcish settlement, Goblin-town. Therefore, it is the High Pass that Thorin's company travels. However, these orcs are clever. In secret, they would place a trap along this seemingly safe pass in the mountains. For within a cave along the pass, they would open a passageway to their halls. They called it the front porch, and it is in this very cave where Thorin's company would take refuge during a storm. So well hidden was this opening that even Gandalf did not detect it, for he had explored the cave thoroughly before settling in for the night. Thus the orcs' bait was in the trap, and soon their prey would be taken to Goblin-town. After the company had gone to sleep, Bilbo has a nasty dream, one in which a crack in the wall at the back of the cave got bigger and bigger. Paralyzed with fear in his dream, he is unable to call for help, as the floor of the cave gives way and he begins to fall. Awaking with a start, Bilbo finds his dream is partially true. The crack in the wall had opened into a large passage. He yells out, but it's too late. The company is attacked by a group of at least 74 goblins, for we are told there were 6 to each dwarf and 2 for Bilbo. They are taken by force deeper into the mountain, though Gandalf is nowhere to be seen. And as the goblins come closer to their main settlement, they begin to sing a tune that no doubt lives in the brains of many fans.
Down, down, down in Goblin-town.
Or maybe,
Goblins laugh, the goblins bleat, never whip and never blow. Tis all my land.
whatever your chosen tune, the goblins promise pain and misery to their captives. And while we may look at this tune in adaptations as nostalgic or funny, the actual lines hint at the dark fate that would await those they captured. Among the lyrics are cracking whips and goblins laughing, and their captors are instructed to crush and smash with hammer and tongs. And as Tolkien explains, these goblins would use their prey as slaves, and these slaves would be made to work until they would die for want of air and light. But these goblins, who were said to be cruel, wicked, and bad-hearted, were not just simple beasts of cruelty. They were also said to mine and tunnel as well as any but the most skilled dwarves. And while their craftsmanship left much to be desired when it came to weapons, they had a knack for inventing machines of torture, or those to bring great destruction, for wheels and engines and explosions delighted them. The company is finally brought to Goblin-town, where they would meet the leader, the Great Goblin. Sitting upon a large stone, this great orc with a huge head says,
"Who are these miserable persons?" "Dwarves. And this,"
said one of the drivers, pulling at Bilbo's chain so that he fell forward onto his knees.
"we found them sheltering in our front porch."
"What do you mean by it?"
said the Great Goblin, turning to Thorin.
"Up to no good, I'll warrant. Spying on the private business of my people, I guess. Thieves, I shouldn't be surprised to learn. Murderers and friends of elves, not unlikely. Come, what have you got to say?"
"Thorin the dwarf at your service," he replied. It was merely a polite nothing. "Of the things you suspect and imagine, we had no idea at all. We sheltered from a storm in what seemed a convenient cave and unused. Nothing was further from our thoughts than inconveniencing goblins in any way whatever."
Said the Great Goblin. "So you say. Might I ask what you were doing up in the mountains at all? And where you were coming from, and where you were going to? In fact, I should like to know all about you. Not that it would do you much good, Thorin Oakenshield. I know too much about your folk already. But let's have the truth, or I will prepare something particularly uncomfortable for you."
"We were on a journey to visit our relatives, our nephews and nieces, and first, second, and third cousins, and other descendants of our grandfathers who live on the east side of these truly hospitable mountains," said Thorin, not quite knowing what to say all at once in a moment, when obviously the exact truth would not do at all.
He is a liar, O truly tremendous one,
said one of the drivers.
Several of our people were struck by lightning in the cave when we invited these creatures to come below, and they are as dead as stones. Also, he has not explained this.
He held out the sword which Thorin had worn, the sword which had come from the troll's lair. The Great Goblin gave a truly awful howl of rage when he looked at it, and all his soldiers gnashed their teeth, clashed their shields, and stamped. They knew the sword at once. It had killed hundreds of goblins in its time, when the fair elves of Gondolin hunted them in the hills, or did battle before their walls. They called it Orcrist, Goblin Cleaver, but the goblins called it simply Biter. They hated it, and hated worse anyone that carried it.
"Murderers and elf friends,"
the Great Goblin shouted.
"Smash them, beat them, bite them, gnash them. Take them away to dark holes full of snakes and never let them see the light again."
He was in such a rage that he jumped off his seat and himself rushed at Thorin with his mouth open. At that moment, the lights in the cavern go out, and the great fire in the middle of the room turns into a tower of blue glowing smoke, throwing white sparks among the goblins. Amidst the chaos that ensues, Gandalf, wielding Glamdring, another blade of Gondolin, kills the Great Goblin. Thus the company makes their escape, though Bilbo would be separated and have his encounter with Gollum. Meanwhile, Gandalf and the dwarves make their way through the tunnels of Goblin-town. They would eventually come to the Goblin Gate on the eastern side of the Misty Mountains. This is called the Back Door by the orcs, and Gandalf would explain its use. "They made that gate ages ago," he said, "partly for a way of escape if they needed one, partly as a way out into the lands beyond, where they still come in the dark and do great damage. They guard it as always, and no one has ever managed to block it up. They will guard it doubly after this," he laughed. It would be this door where Bilbo would lose his button squeezing through to escape Gollum. And while this passage to their home and passage out to harass Wilderland may have been more heavily guarded in the days to come, the more immediate effect of this encounter would be none other than the Battle of Five Armies. Word of the slaying of the Great Goblin would spread, and it causes the orc hatred of dwarves to rekindle into a fury. While the settlement of Goblin-town was no doubt a sizable city for their kind, it was far from the only one. We are told that at this time the orcish capital is none other than Gundabad, and Bolg, the great chieftain of that area, would, in response to the deaths of both the Great Goblin and the dragon Smaug, mobilize a great force of orcs from both the Misty Mountains and the Grey Mountains. While the Great Goblin is referred to as the Goblin King— Dance, magic, dance. No, not that one. There we go. In Peter Jackson's adaptation, it isn't certain that he was actually the overall ruler of the orcs. for one would expect the true king of their kind to live in their capital. But whatever his role, the Great Goblin is clearly an important figure among the orcs. Enough so that his death would help spark the Great Battle of Five Armies. But there were also those who were glad at the news of the Great Goblin's demise. When the company had come to the home of Beorn the Skin Changer, he was enthralled with Gandalf's recounting of their story, and after going off to confirm it was true, he would be most amused.
I have come home as fast as I could to see that you were safe, and to offer you any help that I can. I shall think more kindly of dwarves after this. Killed the Great Goblin. Killed the Great Goblin.
He chuckled fiercely to himself. And it is Beorn's descendants in the Fellowship of the Ring who give our only hint into what became of Goblin-town in later days. For it is said that Grim Beorn the Old, Beorn's son, and his Beornings would keep the High Pass open to travelers, no doubt protecting against things like goblins on the path. However, the need for them to do so also tells us that the goblins were alive and well under the northern Misty Mountains. And indeed, when it came time for the Fellowship of the Ring to embark on their great journey, they would opt for a more southerly route, avoiding the pass above Goblin-town and the perils that lay east of the Misty Mountains. As always, I want to say a huge thank you to all my Patreon and YouTube supporters who make this channel possible. CCDC Red Team, Evil Chameleon, Tom DeBombadil 19, Lissamy the Cinda, Rabbi Rob Thomas, Charles Leisure, Joe Tepper, The Mighty Mim, Andrew Carlisle, Swirled Traveler, Matthew Jeffrey, Viking Lord, Alvin Einbert, Jeremy Daniel Derby, Madame Director, Freya Firestar, Chris and Meg Q, Leo Vittori, Sky Carcass, Slide Belts, Dane Ragnarsson, Berto Berg, Graham Derricott, The Dark-Haired One, Wyland, Kiara Berlin, Z and N, Evely, Kia, Micah Wu, and Debbie. If you enjoyed the artwork in this video, check out the artists in the description to purchase prints of their great work for yourself. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time on Nerd of the Rings.